This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Hello and welcome to the latest Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo. I'm your host, Matt Addison, with Ian Doyle and Theo Squires with me to preview this weekend's huge game against Manchester United. We'll also be taking a look back at the win over Atletico Madrid, which was on Tuesday night, and as ever, we will go chronologically and start with that 3-2 victory Doyle over Diego Simeone's side. I think we all said on Monday's podcast that there was no way that Liverpool could keep scoring 3 goals away from home, and as ever, they proved us all wrong.
We were wrong. We were laughing at Theo. He said 3-0, but he was very, very close to being correct there. Yeah, it was an interesting game, certainly. Someone must be something about that yellow kit. Was it the Brentford game was 3-0? And I'm not entirely sure whether will they be playing in the yellow kit on Sunday.
I think it's the white one. I swear I saw something on Twitter saying it's the white one.
Right, well, okay, well, at least there won't be 15,000 goals, I don't think. Although there might be. We'll come to that later on, I suppose. But yeah, in Madrid, it was a strange game, really, wasn't it? First 15, 20 minutes, it was all Liverpool, but then the minute that Atletico Madrid scored, got one back, which, should it have been allowed? I must admit at the time I didn't think it was offside, but then when they actually went through it at half-time, it was like, well, actually, that probably should have been given as offside. Certainly in the Premier League, it would have been given as offside. Then they got the tails up, and Liverpool again, for whatever reason, they seem to be this season throwing away an awful lot of leads. I know they're unbeaten, but what was it, twice against Brentford? Okay, they come through against Atletico. There's been a few other games where they've twice against Manchester City, for example. There's another one. So they have been a little bit slipshod and slapdash in that regards. But going forward, I think it was a difficult one really to rate the players, wasn't it? Because obviously that's what I did, and I gave nearly all of them 6 because we started off very well, and then they just disappeared for a while. Second half, again, difficult to judge because of the red card for Griezmann, which don't think it's one of those, isn't it? When I was growing up, that's never a red card. But, it's a foul. But you didn't mean it. But in this day and age, you can't really raise your feet. Certainly not in Europe. You can't raise your feet anyway. Certainly when you then end up putting it in the face of an opponent. So, he was bound to go. A bit unlucky. I think everybody kind of assumed that. And then after that, Liverpool made a little bit of hard work of getting that victory. I mean, it was definitely a penalty for the foul on Jota. The interesting one for the Atletico Madrid one is that I thought it wasn't a penalty. But then when you saw the replay, there was clearly contact between them. And it's one of those ones where had the referee not given it, there's no way VAR would have said, take a look at this, do you think it's a penalty? But because the referee had given it, I was surprised that VAR then came and said, look, you need to have a look at this because there was contact between them. But I know Liverpool won't complain too much about that. I think, did they deserve the win? Well, you can't really argue with winning 3-2, as we said. I think it'd been nearly 3 years since Atletico Madrid had last conceded 3 goals at home. They'd only ever lost one home game in Europe in that stadium, and that was the first one against Chelsea, and that was a last-minute winner. So, in that sense, I don't think Liverpool, they got nothing to complain about. No one got injured. Obviously, Salah got his 2 goals, although that first one, it took him about 20 minutes to decide he'd actually scored it, but it was still all his work. And he got the penalty at the same end where he scored in the Champions League final against Tottenham. So that regard, everything fine. But I think there were, Klopp said it afterwards, didn't he? He said it was a dirty win. Didn't play at our best. The players were quite, they came out quite honest about it, saying, look, we played a lot better than that, but we dug in. We got the win. And most importantly, unlike the Chelsea game earlier this season, they made the most of the fact that they actually were down. We're playing a team that was down to 10 men. They still a little bit nervy towards the end, but once Fabinho had come on at half-time, I think that was something that Jurgen Klopp had said was a bit of a... He didn't name him directly, did he? But he said, would I pick the same team again from the start? Probably not. That's clearly inferences that he would have played Fabinho from the start. I think that 1 or 2 other players looked a bit tired. Jordan Henderson was one. Could argue the centre-backs, Virgil van Dijk. How often do you see him get turned like that? The way that Griezmann did? Well, not even turned. It was just totally out of position, just facing the wrong way. So unusual. And that had come from Matip stepping out as well. And I'm sure we'll mention Naby Keita as well a little bit later on, what happened with him. So overall, you can't argue with a 3-2 win at the Spanish champions, let's not forget, which quite clearly was the best 3-2 victory of any English team in the Champions League this week.
Absolutely. We'll come on to another English team that did that a little bit later on. We'll come on to Naby Keita and a few sort of defensive issues a little bit later on as well. But as ever, we have to mention Mohamed Salah. Theo, I thought Atletico actually did quite well to contain him in the most part, but he still comes away with 2 goals and is the Liverpool match winner.
Yeah, that's basically what Mohamed Salah's doing this season when he's in this form. I think it was similar against Manchester City where he wasn't as most influential. We wouldn't have been on the ball or causing as much damage as he would have liked. But when he gets those key moments, he makes it count. It was a brilliant run for the goal. It definitely was his goal. Nowhere near James Milner, I think, from one of the replays when they finally decided on it. But it's one where defenders are now terrified of him. He's taken it up to that next level where you can't stop him. As soon as he starts sprinting or he's dropping his shoulder, they're scared of taking him out. And it's not even as though this was in the box. Defenders scared of taking him out. This is outside the box. They could have conceded a free kick and got away with it, but he's just too quick for them. That's why he's the best player in the world at the moment. And he is capable of winning Liverpool games, not on his own, but Liverpool can have poor games, not be at the best, and he can have a quiet game and you still back him to manage to get the 3 points out of sometimes nothing. It's why he has got this status and why he's reached this new level. It's why the contract debate will wrangle on, because at the moment he is winning Liverpool games. It's not becoming a case of can they afford to keep him. It's you can't afford to lose him because he is being so influential. The fact that the only game he's not scored in this season, he kind of did score in it. It was VAR that stopped him. All the goals, all the...
Ooh. I think we might have lost Theo there.
Oh dear, Theo, we've lost him. We've lost him there, haven't we? He's in the office, isn't he? So, oh dear.
He is. Not a good sign for the Wi-Fi moving forward.
No,
in the office, but we'll move swiftly on anyway. I'll I suppose I might as well ask you as well, Doyle, about Mohamed Salah. I mean, I suppose at this point there's not a great deal else to say about him, is there? We know how good he is. We know how important he's going to be, and I suppose there's not much more we can say other than that.
No, we can always say more, and we have to fill time now that Theo's getting himself sorted. But it was funny with Salah, wasn't it, when he got substituted towards the end and he had to do the walk around half of the pitch in front of the Atletico Madrid fans, and you could see that they weren't giving him the greatest reception. But in that in itself that's exactly what he'd want to hear, isn't it? Because if he's getting that kind of reception, he's obviously done something right to upset them, and he's done, as Theo said, he wasn't particularly brilliant as such, but he still gets the 2 goals. Hold his nerve at the penalty. You've got to also bear in mind that his last penalty, that was in the Champions League, and he'd missed against AC Milan. So, looking at the replay, it was quite interesting. I genuinely think he just changed his mind right at the last second as he was about to hit it because he saw the keeper go. So he went, I'm going to put it this side. But that's the sign of a great penalty taker, which is what he is. And he's a great player. We've said before now that he's the best player in the world. And for him to do that on that stage, we see him all the time. People watching the champion, a lot of people watch the Premier League, but the Champions League is still way up there in terms of, importance and exposure. And hello, Theo, again. I'm
not sure how much of my answer you got there. New office, so blaming the Wi-Fi here. It's a great start to life here.
And obviously the Champions League is the big tournament. More people are watching it, and they'll have seen him go to, as I said, the Spanish champions, score twice, score a goal. That first goal, okay, yeah, it did take a deflection, but it was on its way in. That's why it's his goal. And as Theo said before, just before he got cut off, is the way he went past the players when they was outside the box and they didn't want to touch him. And I think that's something that, the Watford players, Ben Foster said it, didn't he? The Watford goalkeeper last week, he said, look, he's an absolute nightmare because you don't want to get too near him in the penalty area because if you touch him, there's every chance he's going to go down. It'll be a penalty anyway. So, City's found that a couple of weeks ago. Watford found that out on Saturday. Atletico Madrid found that out on Tuesday. And hopefully Manchester United will find that out on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. In superb form at the moment. We'll come on to a few of the slight issues then. I think Theo's Wi-Fi has been a bit sporadic so far. Naby Keita's performance probably similar on Tuesday night.
That
Theo.
is absolutely seamless.
I had enough time whilst Theo was away to come up with that little line. But there has been a fair bit of criticism for Naby Keita, Theo, since that performance. But I suppose that's just inevitable. If you're taken off at half-time and you've had a mixed performance, it sort of comes with the territory, doesn't it?
And the fact that it's in Madrid as well, so it's the memories of the Real Madrid game last season where that happened to him. But it wasn't as though it was his worst performance. Like, granted, they've run away from him a bit too easily for the 2 Atletico goals, but he scored a great strike himself. And the problem with Naby Keita is he's not the player that we thought he was, or he's not been able to do that role that we saw from YouTube compilations. But then what player ever lives up to YouTube compilations? If he did, it'd be this midfielder scoring 25 goals a season, running box to box, and it's just not what you should expect. He is filling more of this Gini Wijnaldum sort of role. And yeah, it wasn't his best performance. That's why he was substituted. But remember, it's against Atletico Madrid. You're not going to take off your captain. You need Jordan Henderson for that type of game. when it is going to be an ugly match where it's nitty gritty. And you need James Milner for that sort of game when he's on as well. So it really is, out the three, Naby Keita was the only one that could come off to get Fabinho on, to get that added bit of defensive steel. There's always going to be debate about Naby Keita. It's been the case ever since he joined the club, whether he deserves his place, whether they should just say, right, the experiment's not worked, we're going to have to cash in on him, or whether we can actually see a player that Liverpool thought they were signing from RB Leipzig, the player that was tearing up the Bundesliga, that Jurgen Klopp was so excited to bring to the club in the first place. It's probably a bit too late to say jury's still out, because you're just expecting this now. You're going to see glimpses of his talent, sensational goals, and then you're going to have games where he's not at his best. I've seen comments from ex-players this week saying he's not good enough for Liverpool. It's probably a bit harsh, because he has had some big moments for the club. It's just about consistency. And he's not got injured in this game, has he? It was just that they needed to make a tactical change to make sure they didn't lose. And it worked. It paid off. You can see the logic in starting Keita against Atletico, because you wanted to attack them from the off. And it paid off. It was just then Liverpool lost control of the game and they needed to go a bit more defensive, get that steal in there. He might not have been a good performer for some of that half, and he might lose his place against Manchester United as a result. But he's still going to have big moments over the rest of the season, no doubt about it, because Naby Keita, when he's on form, can be a match winner.
Yeah, it's not been the worst start for a season for him by any stretch. He's been very good at times this season, but he's not the only one that's had a bit of a question mark over him this week in terms of the midfield. There was a bit of criticism for Milner and Henderson in midfield as well on Tuesday night. What did you make of their performances, Doyle, on Tuesday? And is there any sort of concern about those two as much as there was for Keita, do you think?
Well, I thought Milner played all right, so I don't have any concerns with him whatsoever. Henderson's slightly different, which we'll come on to in a minute. Interesting thing about Milner is that I think he's actually started the last 4 games for Liverpool. It's been 3 years since he started 5 in a row, which is incredible, really. But then it's not incredible when you consider what his role actually has been. You know, that's not counting him coming on a sub, where he may have come on and subbed in half of those other games. So he's ended up making quite a lot of appearances for Liverpool. I didn't have a problem with Milner. And going back to Keita, I think, oddly, you don't mind so much that he got ran away from for the second goal. And you don't mind so much that he got done for a bit of skill for the first goal. You mind with the fact that they both happened one after the other within the space of, 15 minutes or something? That would have been the issue, is that it isn't just one, it was the fact that it was both. I think he was a bit unlucky in that sense. I think he's always going to be, because of the way that he is, the player that he is, when things like that happen, he's always going to be the most expendable of all the midfielders. Because, as Theo said, I think the jury's no longer out. We know what to expect. We know what you're going to get with him. You're going to get these performances that can sometimes be like they were on. I think if you remember the one at Real Madrid, I think that's kind of an exception. He's never normally that bad. That was just a terrible night for him. You can get ones like the one in Tuesday, where he does some very good things going forward. If you go back and watch it, the amount of times that when he gets the ball in midfield, and the first thing is, I'm going forward now, bye, and he's pushing them forward, and that's what he's good at, and that's what he's best at, and that's what he was bought for. His defensive, shortcomings, and I know that we've heard about, his pressing's very good, and when he's pressing in numbers, that's what made that kind of second goal a little bit odd. I mean, it was good. Also, it was good play by João Felix. What was it? Atletico Madrid played £100 million for him. Oh wow, who knew that he might actually cause some problems? And how much was Griezmann? About £50 million, something stupid like that. I mean, all the teams are allowed to have good players.
It depends how you work it out. Because isn't it? He cost Luis Suarez a couple of league titles and all this.
Well, it's still a lot of money. You know what I mean? It's not as if they paid next to nothing for him, and he's absolutely rubbish. He's a France international. He's won the World Cup, and did he score in the World Cup final? Did he score? I think he did, didn't he? Yeah, he did score the first goal.
He was star of the Euros as well, wasn't he? 2 years before
exactly.
That.
So this is a great player. So it's no wonder he scored twice. I mean, you can't you can't just blame all Liverpool, your own players all the time when other players do good stuff. However, having said that, certainly for the first goal, Keita could have done better with Lamar. I think he got done a bit too easily. But going back to the point I was making about his defensive qualities, once he gets turned, that's when it's difficult for him. And that's where I think Liverpool were getting turned quite a lot in midfield, because Henderson, I've come on to him now, did have a particularly good game. I think he looks tired. He'd not really played in that position properly. I think it was it Burnley he played there? I think he played because Fabinho couldn't play. But it was but with the greatest respect, that's Burnley, who just miss out midfield anyway and just belt it long for the most part. So that's slightly different to playing against a Atletico Madrid team who certainly going forward, once they get past the halfway line, they're all about movements, they're all about quick passing and that kind of thing. And that's where you need your positioning. Certainly, you saw Fabinho within about 2 minutes of him coming on, he made that tackle on Felix, and then that kind of sorted things out a little bit, or sent out a message that Atletico weren't going to be able to run through quite as much as they did in the first half, certainly the second half of the first half. And that's why Keita went off. So I think I agree with Theo that Keita is going to have plenty of games this season. Just think it's one of those. I just think he's always going to be an enigma. And the interesting thing as well is that he has this kind of core support, doesn't he? Certainly on social media, that just think that he should never ever be criticised. But journalists such as myself and some of my former colleagues came in for quite a bit of stick just by saying, "Look, this was just very much what Keita does." And they probably didn't read it. Let's be honest. Just looked at the headline. That's what that happens too often. But we're not. We're not against him in any way, shape, or form. It's just look at what the manager does. He subbed him. We didn't sub him. The manager subbed him. If you've got a problem, have a word with him. But overall, with Keita, as I said, I think he certainly. I can see why he got subbed. I think overall on performance level, certainly Henderson wasn't as good as him. I think Milner was okay. I think Fabinho made a massive difference when he came on. And I also think that he will, as I say, he'll get. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts against Man United, for example. And I wouldn't even be worried in the slightest if he did.
Is there an argument at all, Theo, that maybe we'll see the best of Naby Keita away from these big games? Maybe it's a Watford or a Crystal Palace or a team like that maybe Naby Keita is built for, and maybe Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, teams like that, Manchester United even at the weekend, even though he could start. Is it maybe in the lesser games that we see the best of Naby Keita?
I think he's just a very hot and cold player. He has had some good moments against big teams as well. I think he scored that sensational goal against Chelsea when they won the league, when they lifted the league a couple of years ago. You think, well, we've just been saying how good he is at pressing. Well, if you press Manchester United in midfield, for example, you will come out on top. We know Manchester United are weak in midfield, so it could be a game that's made for him, and it's nothing to do with the size of the teams. He is just a little bit inconsistent. And you think the performances we've had come from him in these last two games, well, they're saying he played really well against Watford, wasn't at his best against Atletico, but that was one of the things, all the clips from the international break and the reports from the international break had said he'd been playing really well for Guinea. He's just a hot and cold player for whatever reason. I'm guessing it's one where he needs a run of games to find form, and you're never going to get that in a Jurgen Klopp Liverpool midfield because it takes so much out of the players. That's why they have so many options and why they rotate. As long as he does step up when he is selected most of the time, that's what you take from him. And it's one where, maybe he is better for games against the lesser teams because you're not needing him to be as defensive-minded. You're allowing him to have more freedom to get forward, influence the attacking game more. But he can still, I suppose, adapt to this defensive side because that's what we've seen from him during these first few weeks of the seasons where he's not been quite as offensive when he has been sort of filling the Gini Wijnaldum role of holding on to the ball, retaining possession rather than bursting into the penalty area. He's learning his role if he is going to be more withdrawn. And it's just a case of, well, whatever you can get from him is a bonus now. He isn't the player that Liverpool fans thought they were going to be seeing, but he's still won a Premier League. He's still won Champions League. All this. He has had a good Liverpool career, just not an exceptional one. But he's still got plenty of time to turn it around and have some big moments. Like Divock Origi's greatest moment was against Barcelona. Who'd have seen that? Some players just turn up against it. There's still plenty of time for Naby Keita to have big moments in Champions League or Premier League games. He could have one this weekend against Manchester United. It's far too early to be writing him off and saying he just comes out against the smaller sides. But he does need to find some consistency.
Absolutely. It'll certainly be interesting to see whether he is in Jurgen Klopp's starting 11 on Sunday. And we will come on now to preview that game with Manchester United, the most important game of this week. I think it goes without saying. Liverpool won 4-2, of course, at Old Trafford last season, Doyle, but there were no fans inside the stadium at that point. How different will the occasion be this time?
Well, 100% different, let's be honest. There were lots of fans there when on the pitch when we tried to play the game first time round. I was outside for nearly 4 hours, getting a bit. Actually, to be honest, it didn't rain. It was just like, what on earth is going on? And then we saw the fans, some of them coming past a bit later on, one with a carrier bag. Don't know what he'd been. He'd gone done his Tesco shopping. I think I made mention of it at the time on the podcast. Go, where's he been? It looked like he'd just, I'll just pop in and just go onto the pitch here. Now I'm off home now. I've got me tea. Bye. Anyway, yeah. So basically, there'll be 70-odd thousand Manchester United fans. We've seen Liverpool in the past, not just under Klopp, but under various managers. The record at Old Trafford's appalling. It's terrible. I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but the win. Which let us be honest, we can't hold as much stock in that win, that 4-2 win, as if there'd been fans there. We can't just come around and say, "Oh, Liverpool only lost those 6 games at home last season because there was nobody there." Well, they only won 4-2 against United because there was nobody there as well. They may have won, but it probably wouldn't have been a game like that. And even then, it was they only made it 4-2 in the last minute, and United still had a chance to score, didn't they? Straight after it, I seem to recall. Yeah, so it's never easy against United. These people who was thinking, Liverpool could just turn up and roll them over. It's never going to happen. Never going to happen. Although, I've been there when they won 3-0 and 4-1. But, the 3-0 game was the very end of the David Moyes reign, and Liverpool needed about 17 penalties in that game. And the other one was when Vidic got sent off, didn't he? So that was a contributory reason for Liverpool winning 4-1. So I think since 2002, they're the only 3 wins, aren't they? I think that's right. Yes, that's 20 years.
Last season was the first under Klopp, wasn't it? So
yeah. So even when Liverpool, remember they had the winning record and they were going for the record of most wins in a row. They went to Old Trafford and had to scrape a not last minute, but very late equaliser through Lallana, which they deserved. But they'd been awful first half, and the amount of times they'd just frozen at Old Trafford in front of all those supporters, I just don't really understand it, to be honest, because they've just gone to Atletico Madrid, which is far more volatile, and just won 3-2, and they've won at loads of other venues, and their away record's brilliant. So,
what's the pressure?
I don't know.
It's the same at Goodison.
Well, with Goodison, they don't lose, though, do they? They don't lose.
Yeah, but they still don't win, is it? These are the games where they don't quite perform, and historically in the Klopp era is a bit more conservative.
It could be something to do with that, but we'll obviously get onto the team selection in a bit, but I do think Liverpool can't afford just to sit back and allow United to somehow dictate things, because United's massive weak point is the midfield. So I'm pretty sure that where Liverpool will want to get on top very early on is in that area, and that'll depend on who they pick. And look, that's the conversation we just had about 3 or 4 minutes ago about the midfield was a bit of an issue against Atletico. So it will be interesting. But yeah, I think the 4-2 win, it looks nice, but it's not the same game, and it'll be a completely and utterly different game when they play on Sunday, because it'll just be a completely different atmosphere. And United, we can absolutely guarantee, will be massively, massively up for it.
Yeah, I think I'm right in saying 6 out of the last 10 have been draws, so it's always a bit of a cagey one. I think it's difficult to work out quite how United will play this one, Theo. I think in an ideal world, they'd quite like to sit back and counter-attack because that's what they're very good at. But I do just wonder if the crowd and the intensity will let them do that, or whether they will want them to go out and push and press Liverpool, which is maybe not something that they're as good at, Liverpool, at being able to do.
It's going to be a tough one for them. I suppose the Atalanta games made it completely different for them, because if they'd come into this one off the back of a defeat there as well, then they'd be really up for this, but the pressure would be on massively as well, and you'd be asking more questions about Solskjaer's future. We know what Liverpool's strengths are. We know what Manchester United's weaknesses are. And on paper, that is where the game is won. Liverpool are very good at pressing and putting teams under pressure, that high, relentless attacking football where it's counter-attacking and making teams pay. And that is where United are weak, in the middle of the park, where players don't have that work rate, where they can be caught on the ball. And Liverpool could make them pay in that respect. But it's Liverpool, Manchester United. These games don't follow traditional patterns. Like, teams can just turn up. Like, United do turn up in this fixture a lot, whereas Liverpool will have some of their quieter moments. It's one where the first goal could be crucial. It could be if Liverpool start really well, get an early goal, then they could get a comfortable victory. But if United get the first goal, it's going to be more like 2 years ago, where it could be that counter-attacking, waiting for a late equaliser, just knocking on the door. You've just got to see what happens on the day, who turns up. We know how good Liverpool can be when they're at the best. But if they play like they did against Atletico Madrid, where they weren't, United could make them suffer. It's where Liverpool can get caught out by the pace. We're talking about The defence, Virgil van Dijk's still coming back from a serious injury. Joel Matip, while they're in good form, they're still leaky. They're still conceding goals. If you've got, I don't know, who've got Marcus Rashford, if he's fit. Mason Greenwood's had a good start to the season. It could be a game for Jadon Sancho to actually turn up. And then there's Cristiano Ronaldo. They've still got Edison Cavani. They've still got Anthony Martial. They've got so many attacking talents. It only takes a couple of chances for them and they will be scoring. Maybe it'll be a bit too much to say, it's going to be a 3-3 draw, but you'd imagine there are going to be goals in it. It's just how it starts. It almost worked last time, so we can go along. I'll say 3-3 and it'll finish 3-2. Liverpool, we'll find out. But yeah, Liverpool, they need to play better than they did against Atletico Madrid, and they need to make sure that they actually make Man United's weaknesses in midfield. They need to suffer for that. If they can win that midfield battle, they should come out on top.
We'll come on to Cristiano Ronaldo in a second, but just on the midfield, Doyle, Jurgen Klopp, we know, confirmed this morning or early this afternoon that Curtis Jones will be back for this game. Is there an argument to put him straight in, do you think? And I mean, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking possibly the reason they didn't risk him against Madrid was maybe with this one in mind.
There is, and we'll find out when we pick our team whether or not we're going to put him in it. But yeah,
can you give us a spoiler?
No spoiler alert or anything like that.
I was about to say, is that no, you're not playing him, or is that no spoiler?
That's no spoilers. No spoilers. No, we don't want to do. We want to keep people interested because we know everybody's hanging on what I'm going to think the midfield's going to be. Let's be honest.
It's going to be all over news now, isn't it? Liverpool journalists.
Yeah, it will be. Yeah. Lack of respected Liverpool journalist. Yeah, disrespected Liverpool journalist even. So I don't even know words. Don't even know why I'm doing journalism, to be honest. Curtis Jones, yes. I think that's pretty obvious that he's going to have a big part to play. That's not ruining it for anybody. I think did he play in the 4-2? He certainly set up the last goal, didn't he, for Salah? He put him away. I'm not sure whether he started, but he definitely started in the FA Cup game, and he started on the left wing, I seem to remember, in the attack. And he then got shifted to a kind of central area, and he did quite well, actually. So, and also it's the whole thing about it's a local player playing against Man United. He'll be absolutely well up for it. You know what Curtis Jones is like. He loves this kind of thing. So, and forget any of that. When he was playing before his injury, he was in the team and he was playing really well. So in that respect, he would be very much worth his place, which he may or may not get, depending on what we say later on.
Yeah, absolutely. We will come on to our team selections in not too long, but I think we do have to touch on Ronaldo, Theo. As I mentioned before, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer said before that he would back Cristiano Ronaldo ahead of Mohamed Salah. I'm not sure any of us would agree on that at this moment in time, but Ronaldo is sort of a big game player, a man for the big occasion, and Liverpool will have to take care of him this weekend.
Yes, they will, but he hasn't got the best record against Liverpool in terms of stepping up. I think he's only scored 2 or 3 against them. One of them was for Real Madrid at Anfield. We remember the Champions League final where, granted, Real Madrid beat Liverpool, but it's not as though he was at his influential best. And he has had a strange season so far. Like, he's scored goals, but there are games where he's perhaps not gone missing, but he's not been as influential as you'd expect him to be. He is a terrific player. He is one of the very best the game has ever seen, and he is capable of scoring goals. But he's not this player that United fans really remember, the quick winger trickery, or even when he went more central. He is now just 6-yard sort of finisher, isn't he? He stays in the box. Yes, he can still dribble. Yes, he can still run. But that's where he does the damage, in the 6-yard box, in the penalty area, ball at his feet. And if he gets a chance, he will score. You need Virgil van Dijk and Joel Matip to be at their very best to keep him quiet, because United will be trying to get him on the ball as much as possible to take chances and to win them this game. But you compare him to Mohamed Salah. We're saying Mohamed Salah is the best player in the world at the moment. Cristiano Ronaldo has been one of the top 2 players in the world for the past decade, 15 years. That crown's been taken now. The Egyptian king has that crown now for me this season. So who's winning games this season? Mohamed Salah. He's scoring in every game. He's setting up goals. He is winning Liverpool games. Ronaldo is scoring, and they aren't always winning games. Like, they've lost in the Champions League, they've out the League Cup, they've lost games in the Premier League to lesser teams, they've dropped points. That's why there's already this big gap in the title race. So who's going to be the difference the weekend? Well, on form at the moment, you'd say Mohamed Salah is more likely to get Liverpool a win than Ronaldo would get Manchester United a win. But it's Liverpool versus Manchester United, and it's Cristiano Ronaldo. So 89th minute penalty, Ronaldo that could easily be part of the narrative. You never want to write it out off. You never want to say something like that because it could come back to bite you. Liverpool have to be aware of him. They will respect him massively. And I think it's one where the United probably need a bit more from him. It's the sort of game where you expect him to step up and make a difference. But then you wouldn't be surprised if Virgil van Dijk stepped up and kept him in his back pocket either.
Yeah, certainly a big battle between those two. I think I am expecting Ronaldo to have an impact at some point. It just feels like that kind of occasion that he'll want to stamp his mark on. Just before we pick our teams, I know there was a lot of sort of talk of combined 11s earlier in the week. I know Jamie Carragher and Gary Neville did a couple of combined 11s on Monday Night Football. I'm not going to ask you to both take us through your own combined 11s.
Well,
but
we've done one.
I've done it. I've done a piece already.
Oh, in fact? Okay, let's do it then. I think for me, there are two players. I think Doyle might disagree with me on one of them because it's Bruno Fernandes.
But did you see him? Did you see him most of the game against Atalanta? You just kept on passing it to Atalanta.
Yeah, anyway, I still think he's a very good player. Anyway, yeah, Bruno Fernandes and Cristiano Ronaldo are the two that would get into my combined 11. But Doyle, I don't want to spoil the piece, but is it very Liverpool weighted, your team?
Yeah. Basically, the back six are all Liverpool players, so that's sorted. And you've got two of the forwards are Liverpool players. So then you got three positions. And the interesting thing is, probably you'd have to play Ronaldo just because it would just be annoying. Right? You know, you have to still admit that he is quite good at football, even though he can't run. So he'd be up front. I picked Pogba. Right. I picked Pogba because I think Pogba's probably United's most talented footballer. And I know lots of people say, Graham Souness will be on to me in a minute. But the thing about Graham Souness is that the reason he gets so frustrated is because he probably thinks the same that I do. That he's brilliant. He's quite clearly brilliant at football. And when he plays for France, he's in the correct position. And look how good he is. He's scored in the World Cup. Another one that scored in the World Cup final. Liverpool just keep on coming up against him at the moment. So, if he plays, and if I was Manchester United, I would be playing Pogba on Sunday, and I'd be playing him in the number 10 position. And I'd just say, just go and do whatever you want. That's what I'd be 100% be doing if I was United. Not that Solskjaer listens to this podcast. Although he is a Liverpool fan, don't forget.
You're not written that this time.
No, not this time. No, bored with that now. He's been there too long. I think everybody knows it by now. No, I'd have Pogba and Ronaldo, and then that third midfielder. You just pick a Liverpool midfielder. It doesn't really matter which one as such, because it depends on who the Liverpool's midfield. It depends on who they're playing against. You could pick Henderson. You could pick Thiago. You could pick Curtis Jones. Am I saying Curtis Jones is a better footballer than Bruno Fernandes? Probably not. No, not at the moment. But Paul Pogba's better than Bruno Fernandes, so he's played in that position. So that would be, my joint team is basically the Liverpool team with Ronaldo and Pogba.
Interesting. Very close to mine, but I went with Fernandes in the number 10. Theo, can you give us a bit of an insight into your combined team as well?
Well, mine basically is just two-footed half the United team, saying the midfield's not very good, and they've got the most expensive defender in the world, who was responsible for conceding for 4 goals last weekend.
He was half fit. That wasn't his fault. He should never have been playing anyway. I felt a bit sorry for him.
Whereas Liverpool got a free transfer, he's in the best form of his career. So, like Doyle, Liverpool dominate the back 5, probably make that back 6. I know our counterparts at the MEN are saying De Gea is in better form than Alisson at the moment. Well, they clearly didn't watch the Atletico game or any other game Liverpool this season. Alisson is very much back to his best and one of, if not the best goalkeeper in the world. And then it is the same debates, isn't it? You're going to have Salah in there. You're going to have another Liverpool forward in there. You're going to have them dominating most of the midfield. It's Ronaldo and then Pogba or Fernandes. I've gone for a 4-2-3-1, and that should tell you which one of the two I'm going towards. I can tell Matt might have clocked it by that little smirk there. But yeah, it is one of those
world-class Bruno Fernandes.
No comment. You have to read the piece to find out.
Okay, I'm sure we will when that comes out. But just before we finish, then we'll pick our actual Liverpool teams for the game. We know Alisson will be in goal. I presume we're both, or all, I should say, going for the same back 4 as well. So presuming that is the case,
I'm not. I'm slightly concerned with the 2 centre backs, and I'm going to go with Joe Gomez instead of Matip.
Interesting. Theo, are you with me in terms of Matip and Van Dijk, or is there an argument for a change, do you think?
it's one where you'd like to rest Van Dijk, but you're not going to see that happening against Manchester United. That's going to be Preston on Tuesday night. Was it before the third round game where you thought, oh, Klopp will just play Konate and Gomez against Norwich, but then he gave Konate again, didn't he? That was
against
the game.
Crystal Palace.
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
So but then he played anyway, didn't he? He played anyway, didn't he? Yeah.
Maybe it will be in one case where he makes the change, but I think still you expect to see Liverpool's first choice back five, knowing full well that we can pick a team, and Jurgen Klopp rarely picks the same team as us because he always throws out a curveball. So maybe Doyle will be right, but then we've seen Doyle be wrong a few times as well. So I will go with you on this one, Matt, just because it's the safer bet. But I wouldn't be surprised if Doyle is right either.
Yeah, I think there's been long enough from Tuesday that you can throw Matip in again for sure. In terms of the midfield, I'm going to go with Curtis Jones. I think Fabinho is an absolute certainty to come in, and then Jordan Henderson will be there as well. Are you the same, Doyley, or is there maybe a Milner or a Keita in there?
Oh, it's a tough one, isn't it? Fabinho and Jones are definitely playing. Come back to me on the third one.
I can't see Henderson not playing, though, can you?
Well, he's looked really tired the last couple of games. He's not been particularly great. So he looks like somebody who was out for ages, came back on adrenaline, and then just isn't, he's struggling to get back to his best form. I think
he's not had a full pre-season, has he? With the Euros, that's probably all counts against him. Like, you think Van Dijk had the summer off, had a full pre-season, so he could at least go flying into the season. Henderson wanted to play in the Euros. Yeah, he had a reasonable Euros considering he was at sub for pretty much the whole thing. But then it delayed return for pre-season, and he's just been thrown straight back into the mix, and that's counted against him. But it's a game where he has to play, doesn't he? You want to give him a rest, but you can't drop your captain for Manchester United away. It would have been one we potentially could have if James Milner hadn't played in midweek, but you're not going to see Milner play 4 games in a row in midfield, are you? So Henderson will be starting, Fabinho will be starting, and then it's Curtis Jones or Naby Keita, and I am leaning towards Curtis Jones just because he was in such good form before the injury. It's harsh against Naby Keita, but as we've been saying earlier in the podcast, local lad, it's Manchester United. We'd like to see him step up and make his own little name getting in the lights, make his big moment like we've seen Steven Gerrard do in the past, like we've seen Liverpool fan Danny Murphy do in the past, all these local English lads. Curtis Jones' turn. And I'm going to get some stick for saying that.
Sorry. I'm going to change my mind and say I can't play Gomez and Milner, so I'm going to put Matip back at centre-back, and I'm going to play Milner. Because he definitely had a good game in the FA Cup game there last year. I think he had just handed both goals, didn't he?
Wait, Milner right back or Milner centre mid?
No, Milner centre mid. Milner centre mid with Fabinho and Curtis Jones.
Interesting.
Blow minds there, I know. But
no,
basically heard what I've said and then thought, going to do complete opposites. Ignore that one.
Let's see if we're on the same page in terms of the front three, which I think we probably will be. I think this is an absolutely tailor-made game for Roberto Firmino, and then obviously Salah will be there, and probably Sadio Mane on the opposite side doing.
I'm going to go with the... No, I'm not really going to read. I think I'm going to go with those three, yeah. With Jota definitely coming on. It's a shame. If Thiago had been fit, I think this was a game where he'd have just gone in and just started messing about, just doing it here, there and everywhere. And I think he's someone I've mentioned in a couple of pods recently. He has been missed, as I'm concerned. Don't forget Liverpool. Okay, I know when you played something like 4 games or something daft like that, but Harvey Elliott started the season in very good form. So Liverpool have already lost 2 players who were kind of in and around that team at the beginning. So, yeah, I think it'll be that 3 with Jota to come on, and then if it's my team, then you've got Henderson and Keita and the centre-back options. And so there's enough there for Liverpool if they want to change things.
Yep. Theo, what's your front 3? Are you in agreement?
Yeah, tried and trusted. It's still a first choice front 3 for me. Roberto Firmino's in form, whereas Jota's had not as a lively season as we've seen from him last year. But it's the sort of game where you can see Jota off the bench, point to prove, grab an important goal. He scored, didn't he, Old Trafford last year?
Yep.
And then it's against his compatriots, isn't it, in Fernandes and Ronaldo. Let's see if Jota can be the one making headlines off the bench as opposed to the A-list names that United have got.
Yeah, absolutely. Plenty of options for Jurgen Klopp to pick from, so it'll be interesting to see which ones he does go with. Just before we finish then, we'll do our usual match predictions. I'm going to go for 3-1 to Liverpool, I think. I'm going to go bold.
Have you watched any football ever in the past?
Yes,
he's just listened to the 3 goals away from home run, isn't he?
3 goals away from home. I think think Mohamed Salah steals the limelight from Cristiano Ronaldo. Doody, you disagree?
I think United are going to win 2-1. I
Wow,
just think
I'm
it's
sure that'll be
it's
a popular
totally. You know, we never say that Liverpool are going to get beat on this podcast, do we ever?
No,
but I think if they're going to lose one, I think this is just massively set up for United. Totally, they've got absolutely, as Theo said before, they've got they'll be in the mood for the game no matter what. But because they beat Atalanta, it's a free hit for them. It's a free hit. You know, I think they know they're not going to win the league. United, I think they know that. They know they're probably going to finish in the top 4, but Liverpool think they got a chance of winning the league, and they have. But to do that, they're going to have to go to places like this and get a result. You know, you are going to lose games along the way, but if Liverpool win this, they'll be 7 points clear of United. And, you know, they're not out of the race there and then, but it makes it very difficult for them to come back. Certainly with the fixtures that I think United have got coming up. I think this is their first tough game, isn't it, of quite a few. So I think it's a massive deal for them. I think Liverpool, if they do have one weakness, is dealing with the crowd at Old Trafford. And obviously, I want to get proven wrong, but you know, as you said before, Ronaldo, 86th minute header from a corner that shouldn't have been given, that kind of thing. You can see that. You can see that happening with Liverpool playing probably better than they probably did when they won 4-2, but not getting a result. I mean, I hope I'm wrong, but as I say, that's what I think will happen.
Yeah, that's the important thing, isn't it? Dealing with the crowd, making sure they get on top of that. And I do fancy them if they can do that. I think they are a much better team. But Theo, what do you reckon it might be? You're going for another 3-3?
There's going to be late goals. You think last season, was it Fernandes last minute winner in the FA Cup? Obviously, Salah scored late on. Year before would have been Lallana, late equaliser. So it's going to be drama right until the end. So we saw 5 goals and 6 goals last year. Should I go for a 5-goal thriller, 3-2 Liverpool? Make it similar to Atletico with another late goal. You're not happy with that one, Doyley?
I don't like these late goals things. At least it's a 4:30 kickoff, so I've got a bit more time to write my stuff. But not if it was.
And you got me there, giving you a lending hand on this one as well.
Yeah. None of these late goals for these 8 o'clock games. Thank you very much.
For the derby, then that's what we're saving that one for.
8:15. What's that all about? Anyway.
Anyway, 3-2 Liverpool.
That's for another day.
Mohamed Salah scores, Cristiano Ronaldo scores, but Salah and then Jota off the bench, whatever. I think I said that earlier, so we'll be consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, whatever happens, we'll have all of the reaction in all of the usual places across the Echo, Liverpool.com and the Blood Red channel. We'll be back with the Blood Red podcast on Monday, as well as we bring you all of the rest of the reaction post-match and throughout the rest of that week. For now, though, from myself, Matt Addison, from Ian Doyle and from Theo Squires, enjoy the game. It's goodbye for now.